All right, good morning, economics students. So we're going to continue our discussion of prices. Do a quick review of the role of prices, the first in chapter 2, just to go over a few of the concepts that we were talking about, just to kind of get them firm in your head. And then we're going to, that's for lecture number 1. So that's actually going to be a short little review lecture, and then lecture number 2 for Monday, because we have this double period. We're going to be looking at price controls. So a big question about when a government entity tries to either keep the price artificially low for a product or artificially high for a product. Maybe for good reason, maybe for altruistic reasons, but we're going to look at what ends up happening economically when prices are set not by the free flow and the free interaction between supply and demand, but by some kind of command decision by a government entity, a bureau, a department, an entire party that might control the economy, like, for example, in Soviet Russia, or today with the Communist Party of China. All right, so I think we had gotten in chapter 2, we had gotten, I think, to about, we got to, I think, page 27, and we were looking at, I think we got to supply and demand, which of course is a very important concept. So let's just go through a few important points here. First one, he talks about, Sol talks about the difference between a demand and a need. So you demand a product, or do you need a product? And here are two basic economic facts that he would point out. One, and these are obvious, but just because they're obvious doesn't mean that they're not important, and doesn't mean that people ignore them because they have other reasons for acting. The first one is that people buy more at lower prices. Makes sense, right? And they buy less at higher prices. So this idea that the price is going to, in some way, allocate or ration a scarcity of a product because of whether it's high or low. Alternatively, people who are not buying but making products or goods or a service, they produce more when there is a higher price, because they see that there's an incentive to, if I make something and the price is $10 and not $5, if I make more of it, then I'm going to realize that difference in price. And if that, of course, then if that $10 price is something that I will actually be able to make all of my costs and then have something left over, then I'm going to continue to make it. Whereas maybe at $5, I'm not going to recoup all of my costs, and maybe I don't decide to make the product. So those are two really, really fundamental laws of economics, and they demonstrate just how important the price system is in terms of determining how much or how little of a product gets made. In other words, there are no fixed needs of a product. So, you talk about people needing food, clothing, and shelter, and of course they do. But how much? Because all economics really is the study of scarcity, the study of scarce resources that have alternative uses. And because of that fact, there really is no fixed need for a product, and alternatively, there's also no fixed supply of a product. And therefore, the bottom line is that the quantity supplied varies directly with the price. So here is just kind of a small little whiteboard for you. Basic economic fact: people buy more at lower price, less at a higher price. People produce more at a higher price and less at a lower price. Therefore, there's no fixed need of a product and no fixed supply of a product. The quantity supplied varies according to price. That means that, for example, you hear a lot today about supplies of oil, and that perhaps we're bumping up against the amount of oil that there is in the world, and therefore we have to, maybe find other alternative sources of energy, so on and so forth. Well, all that really means is that at the current price for a particular commodity, let's say oil, and how expensive it might be with the current technology, which of course is a part of the cost of extracting the oil, that therefore the price is so high that even if there is a supply of oil, it's trapped in shale rock deposits, and therefore you can't get at it. But now, over the last 20 years, there's this new technology where you can use high pressure water and kind of extract the oil in a different way. Now, of course, it's more expensive than just drilling, and therefore it takes more technique, it takes more types of specialized pieces of equipment, and therefore the price of shale oil is much higher. But the costs are much higher to extract it, and so therefore the only way that it's economical if the oil is at a certain price that would allow the producer to recoup those higher costs. And what's happening now is that the oil, there's such a glut of oil on the market because other producers are making it, especially in Saudi Arabia and Russia, and therefore it doesn't pay to produce more oil from these shale deposits, because you're going to sell it at a price that's half as much as it was maybe 2-3 years ago, and therefore they're just going to stop production. So therefore, it doesn't mean that there's not oil. It just doesn't. It just means that there's not enough oil because of the cost of extracting it is so high, and the price is too low. Therefore, they're going to keep it in the ground. So hopefully that makes sense. Another topic that he looks at is the idea of quote unquote real value. Is there something called real value? And what he would argue is that there is no objective or real value for any product or service. That doesn't mean that there aren't certain products that are important for people's lives, but the idea that there's like some kind of objective value of something just doesn't jive economically. Value, in other words, is subjective, okay? And that might actually annoy people, because maybe you feel like there's a certain, let's take teaching. A lot of people talk about, we need a lot of good teachers. And of course, I'm a teacher. I think, of course, that's probably correct. But, why aren't teachers paid more than, let's say, NBA basketball players? So a lot of people say, well, that's distorting the real value, that the real value of teaching is more than what we reward it for, so therefore we should, maybe have the government place caps on NBA players, or lift up the pay of teachers. Okay, but the fact of the matter is that whether it's right or wrong, there are more people who are willing to pay a higher price to go see a few people who can, jump and dunk and hit three-pointer after three-pointer, as opposed to coming and watching my economics lecture. It's just the facts. And therefore, it's not a question of right or wrong. It's just a question that value is subjective, particularly in a free economy. And it varies according to fluctuating demand for a product or a service that satisfies consumer preferences. So again, there is no objective or real value of any product. Value is subjective, and it varies according to the fluctuating demand for a product or service that satisfies consumer preferences. Now look, that doesn't mean that I can't make certain moral claims about why some people might prefer going to NBA basketball games than investing in education. And you might be able to draw some conclusions about what kind of society you're going to get over the long run if you don't have an educated public, but you have a bunch of people who can dunk a basketball. Okay, and again, I love basketball. The point is, in terms of setting a price, if you're going to artificially either deflate or inflate the price or cost of something just because you think that it doesn't comport with what you think the value of something is, then you're ending up going to distort the market for that, and you're going to create either a shortage or a glut, and it's not going to it's actually going to hurt the people that you're probably trying to help. More on that in the next chapter. Another point that he makes is about competition. So there really would be some problems if you had a situation where there weren't a lot of firms that were competing with each other for customers. And if you don't have that, then there really is no incentive for producers to lower price and increase the quality of a product or service they're making. And so part of the function of government, and we saw this a little bit with Smith, is to make sure that that there are there's no cheating that's going on within a marketplace, particularly if you have a monopolistic situation where people are driving other competitors out of the marketplace, whether they're going to the government and asking for benefits, or if they are gouging or manipulating markets unfairly. So he says competition is the key to the operation of a price-coordinated economy. And so that doesn't mean, though, that you aren't going to get fluctuations in price over time. But those fluctuations, there's going to be highs, there's going to be lows. And just like water always seeks a level, a natural level, prices do the same thing. So again, this idea that competition is the key to the operation of a price-coordinated economy. So that, the idea that it's not a command system. Prices are determining how the economy is coordinated and what is being made at what price and at what amount. Prices do fluctuate, but there's a natural equilibrium over time that a price of a product or service will kind of level out to. Okay, and the result of that is that, since, again, economics is about the study of scarce resources with alternative uses, the issue becomes not that you aren't going to have to ration products. You're going to. So, if there's a limited number of anything, you're going to have to say, okay, this amount, we're going to make this amount of this amount of that, right? So, and especially take the example of milk or wood that has alternative uses, you got to make some choices. So the issue is not that things get rationed, it's by which mechanism or what kind of system do things get rationed. Do you do it through a price system or do you do it through a command system? That really is the two options. And, for a lot of human history, this is not just in the recent 19th and 20th century, since Karl Marx got on the scene and was encouraging socialism and all of that. This fight between kind of a free economy where you don't have a lot of regulation. I mean, think about Adam Smith's critique of mercantilism and price, protectionism and against free trade. He railed against that. Well, the British government weren't socialist, but they certainly were trying to control certain aspects of supply and demand, and he felt like that actually was counterproductive and it reduced national wealth. Remember, his book is about the wealth of nations. So again, you're going to ration products. That's just what happens in an economy. The issue is, how do you do it? Okay. So the next section, he talks about prices and supplies. And this is the point that I was just making, that prices ration existing supplies. Okay, so that's one thing that prices do. But they also act as an incentive to cause supplies to rise or fall according to demand. Okay, so they're going to So there's going to be a certain amount of rationing of existing supplies, but then in the future, prices are also going to incentivize people to say, prices are higher for this particular service. Maybe I'll go into that. Maybe I'll go into medicine today as opposed to, I don't know, maybe making horse-drawn carriages, right? So there's a certain, a price point is going to be, oh gosh, I can make a pretty good living being a doctor. Or on the flip side, let's think about, if we're going to cap prices for hospital visits and certain kinds of medical procedures, what that's going to do? That might send a signal to people that, am I going to go through 4 years of college and 4 years of medical school and 4 years of residency, 12 years of really high level education before I can make a living? Or maybe I'll do something else because now they're going to actually cap the amount of money I can make by being a doctor. So, when governments do this, they're trying to solve one problem, but they're going to create a whole host of unintended consequences, and they're going to disincentivize maybe people going into medicine to begin with. And if you have less providers of a product, what's going to happen? Even though you're trying to limit the price of something, you're going to create scarcity. And so less doctors means you're actually going to create a more expensive health care. So he gives examples of food shortages where, do you go in and try to manipulate a price in the short term? But what's going to end up happening is that if you're a producer of a product and you're not getting the rate of return and a price in one particular market, that's actually going to encourage you to export food to another place. The other alternative would be just to accept the higher price, and as a result, maybe people learn to economize, and you wait it out until maybe there's a price fluctuation kind of reverts back to the mean. Okay. Finally, he talks about the fallacy of unmet needs, and he reminds us what his definition of economics is. If economics is the study of the use of scarce resources with alternative uses, then he argues that there will always be some unmet need. And of course, need itself is subjective, isn't it? What do I really, really need? Okay? And so it's not a question that you're going to have unmet needs. The real issue is, how do those unmet needs over a long-term framework actually get met, right? And so are you going to do it through some kind of government solution, or are you going to allow the price system and the free range of supply and demand to fix it? And part of this, too, is like the time horizon. And he's going to go into this a little bit more in greater detail when you're talking about price controls. But he would say that good economic analysis looks at the long term. The problem is that our political system, particularly in a democracy or a representative democracy where you have elections, is that long term doesn't really work politically. You're always trying to, persuade people in the here and now that you've got a quote-unquote plan that's going to help, somebody maybe get health care or something like that. Or you're going to have a plan to reduce greenhouse gas so that we can have a cleaner environment, better air quality, better water quality, and the like. And so that short-term kind of promise, it's easier to kind of tell a voter, hey, I'm going to solve this problem of higher healthcare prices by capping them. Sounds good. The problem is it makes bad economics, and we'll get into that in the next lecture. So, because there are always going to be some unmet needs, another way of thinking about it is that costs are always foregone opportunities for using your resources in a different way. In other words, we don't live in a world, according to the soul, that you have permanent solutions to providing needs. What you live in in the real world is a world of trade-offs, where if you choose one route, one preference, you're going to forego others. We call that opportunity costs. And so that's the world that you live in. The that's reality, as opposed to a politician telling you that you can have your cake and eat it too. So there'll always be some unmet needs. We hope that in the price system there will be fewer unmet needs than in a command system. Costs are foregone opportunities, and we live in a world of trade-offs. Okay, you can't have everything because things are scarce, and that's not Rich Brake saying that. That's not Thomas Sowell saying that. That's the nature of reality. And economics, as any kind of science, uh, should operate in the realm of reality. Okay, so that's the summary of the role of prices. The next lecture that we'll have for today is we'll look at a particular aspect of price, which is government trying to control how much something costs, whether you're trying to keep the price low or maybe try to keep the price high according to various political circumstances. Okay, so we'll get back with that. One note is that you're going to have one Google Forms assignment for both of these lectures, because the one is kind of a review. The second one is a little bit will be a little bit longer and introducing some new material. Okay, so one for Monday, not just one for each lecture. Okay, so we'll combine them. All right, thank you.